Asian markets, well, have slipped in early morning trade as the Wall Street ended with cuts over the week. Retail sales numbers, the Nikkei and the Kospi, as well as the Straits, all of them are trading in the red. In fact, the Kospi is down close to around 1%. That's a couple of factors playing out. The overnight handover was more or less mixed. And the second factor is that the yen has strengthened from close to around the 111 odd mark to around 110. A stronger yen is not good news for the Japanese index. The Kospi as well now down nearly around 0.8%. That market, in fact, has moved to the low point of the day. And barring the Taiwanese index, I think the Straits as well was down close to around 0.1%. The Nifty has been, having quite rocky trading sessions. For starters, though, it's indicating some green, maybe a 10-point bump up, just to kickstart trade. But United States and China negotiators are trying to craft a trade deal to end the trade war. Eunice Yoon is here with what we can expect from trade talks today.
The Treasury Secretary, Steven Mnuchin, and the Trade Representative, Robert Lighthizer, are now entering their second day of discussions here in Beijing. The two are expected to meet with the Chinese Vice Premier Liu He to continue the negotiations. And also before they leave for Washington, they're set to meet with President Xi Jinping himself. So White House Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow has said that meeting is a positive sign that the discussions are going well. This is what he said.
I talked to the group. They're covering all the ground. They're hard at it. They are going to meet with President Xi, so that's a very good sign. And they're just soldiering on. So, I like that story, and I will stay with the phrase, the vibe is good, but I can't give you details.
It's unclear, though, what kind of deal the two are going to take back to President Trump. What we know is that a lot of the issues are being discussed, are on the table, but it's still unclear how much progress is really being made, especially on some of those stickier and thornier structural issues. For example, the U.S. does still want to have state subsidies that the Chinese practice end, and there are reports the Chinese have offered to make their subsidy programs compliant with the World Trade Organization. However, some of the U.S. negotiators apparently are quite skeptical that can be done because the Chinese still don't lay out exactly what the subsidies are.
And in the U.S. markets, U.S. stocks closed mostly lower Thursday as disappointment over weak retail sales overshadowed optimism over U.S.-China trade talks. Consumer staples and financial sectors were the biggest losers, both falling more than 1%. The S&P 500 and Dow Jones average closed lower, while the Nasdaq egged out gains to rise for a fifth session in a row. Retail sales, they fell 1.2% in December, marking their biggest monthly drop since September 2009, while jobless claims showed an unexpected rise in the number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits. CNBC's Steve Lisman is here with what the weak economic data means.
The largest monthly decline in retail sales in 9 years reported by the government raised new questions about the outlook for the economy this year, with specific concern about whether the American consumer is weaker than originally thought. In data that was delayed by the shutdown, the government reported that retail sales for December plunged 1.2%. Wall Street had expected a 0.1% gain. The report, which covers the critical Christmas selling season, showed sales decline in most major categories, including department stores and gasoline stations. The numbers for internet retailers were even negative. Fed Governor Lael Brainerd, in an exclusive CNBC interview, said the data added to a growing list of concerns she has about the economy.
Certainly caught my eye. It's a miss. It's 1 month of data, so don't want to take too much signal from it, but certainly adds to a story where we want to take on board that there's some downside risks. At the same time, we're still getting pretty good numbers, more recent numbers on payrolls.
The big retail miss prompted economists to slash their outlook for fourth quarter growth by 0.7 percentage point to 2.4%. That would make it the weakest quarter since the first quarter of 2018. But there were questions about whether too much was being made of the one retail number because of some unique events.
The consumer was losing momentum going into this final number for 2018, but it also reflects the government shutdown, or at least the initial days of the government shutdown. So the question is, does this weakness reflect a bigger issue in terms of the consumer pulling back, or is this temporary weakness and we should expect a rebound as we wait for those January and or February figures?
Brainerd said the retail number reinforced her support for the Fed's current policy stance, which is to be on hold. She said, quote, "I'm comfortable waiting and learning."
Well, the European markets, they slipped lower on disappointing US retail data. But the Brexit vote, that was the big focus where Prime Minister Theresa May suffered another defeat after MPs voted her approach to Brexit talks. Now, MPs voted by 303 to 258. That's a gap of around 45 votes. That's against a motion endorsing the government's negotiating strategy. Opposition party leader Jeremy Corbyn said that this defeat will make it more challenging for May to convince the European Union leaders that she has the support back home for a revised agreement.
Tonight's vote shows there is no majority for the Prime Minister's course of action in dealing with Brexit. Yet again, her government has been defeated. The government cannot keep on ignoring Parliament or ploughing on towards the 29th of March without a coherent plan. She cannot keep on just running down the clock and hoping that something will turn up that will save her day and save her face.
At the end, we will have a reasonable solution, what means something what is like the agreement which has been reached between British government and EU Commission, but because I don't see any real alternative for this, because everybody agrees a hard Brexit, a Brexit without any deal would be a disaster for UK and for Europe as well.
At the moment, the second referendum is a long way from being viable. There is no majority in Parliament for a second referendum. There isn't even consensus among the supporters of a second referendum, even what the question would be. So we've got a long way before we get to that stage. I think the line of least resistance, both for the UK and for the EU, will be to kick the can to extend. But I have to say that after today's events, which have demonstrated once again both Theresa May's complete incompetence in mishandling of these negotiations and the very dogmatic approach of some people on the of some Brexiteers in her party who would like us to crash out without a deal.
Well, let's move on to the currency space. The dollar weakens on weak US retail sales. Meanwhile, the Japanese yen and euro gain some momentum against the US currency.
And in the world of commodities and crude oil prices, they have come off their highs after a 1% gain on the back of optimism in the US-China trade talks and the OPEC output cuts. Brent crude prices currently holding above the $65 per barrel, and NYMEX as well, flirting with the $55 per barrel mark.
Well, on to a quick note for our viewers. Secure yourself and your family with life insurance. CNBC TV 18 in partnership with ICICI Prudential Life Insurance launches a new initiative called Mission Insure India, Insurance for All. This is a 6-month-long campaign with the objective to create awareness and disseminate knowledge about life insurance and the need to protect one's family. As part of Mission Insure India, we celebrate 15th of every month as Protection Day, a day dedicated to inculcate the thought of protecting families' future.